Hey man, grab that Switch by the and make it yo. What's good, y'all? Soul here, and welcome back to my story mode. So, in one way, we don't have a lot to talk about, but in other ways, we have a lot to talk about. Just recently, we finally got our first ever official reveal of the Nintendo Switch 2. And let me tell you, they gave us a hell of a presentation. We've got a brand new Mario Kart on the way, Zelda's getting a new Warriors game of all things, Toby Fox is releasing Deltarune episodes 3 and 4 at the same time, Team Cherry finally showcased a little bit of Silksong, and it's officially releasing this year, and we got a brand new 3D DK game made by the developers behind Mario Odyssey. Yeah, we're looking good this year, bro. Now, we have already talked plenty in the past of how the Switch 2 could potentially benefit Pokemon. And the thing is, this most recent presentation proved us completely right. Long and short of it is, we were kind of expecting, but also kind of hoping and praying that Pokemon games would run a little bit better, a little bit smoother on better hardware. And the thing about the Switch 2 is that it is much better and much stronger hardware than the Switch ever was. This thing is running 124 frames 1080p in handheld. Are you understanding what I just said? And the craziest part is, they didn't stop there. They easily could have been done with that because that's all we needed, but nope. They decided to go ahead and catch up with their competition and run docked in 4K. Do you hear me? 4K! So, obviously, this absolutely means nothing if the game in of itself is not capable of running these specs. So, in the case of Pokemon, what does that mean? Well, in the off chance that you didn't see the direct for yourself, I've got good news for everybody. And I say good news with a grain of salt. We will get back to why I feel this way. In this presentation, they announced the concept of Switch 2 Edition games, which essentially just means that very specific handpicked titles, whether they are from the early ages of the Switch or games that have been recently announced for Switch, can have Switch 2 editions. And in this very specific case, it's a little more than a remaster, not by much, but with very specific additions made to them. For example, both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are getting Switch 2 editions. Can't say much for Breath of the Wild right now, but as far as Tears of the Kingdom goes, it's not just the fact that it's running at a very stable frame rate with very smooth gameplay, but it also introduces a feature that connects the game to the app and allows you to toggle around on the map there, use different commands and things like that, and also get very specific memories and dialogue that you wouldn't have heard in the base game. So, now everybody's caught up, everybody knows what a Switch 2 edition game is. Pokémon Legends ZA has a Switch 2 edition. We got a very brief glimpse of it during the presentation when they showed off what it was gonna look like, and it was running as smooth as butter, baby. Oh my goodness. At the very least, I am very pleased about the fact that when we do play this game for the first time, a good portion of us will be playing a version that doesn't run or look as nearly as crunchy as Scarlet and Violet. That is at least a step in the proper direction. I know we hate hearing that, but it's something. I'm just very glad that Nintendo has provided all of their development partners a console, a piece of hardware that is capable of doing so much more than the Switch 1 ever was. I also feel like it's safe to say that I was kind of right about the fact that Nintendo was never going to allow Pokémon Legends ZA to run anything like any of the other previous Pokemon games on the Switch 1. If Nintendo has learned anything from their previous eras with the Wii U and the Switch 1, it's that not only do you actually need to have decent hardware for your developers to develop and put games out on, you need to have playable games within its first year. And for Pokemon to be a big first year title, yeah, there was no way it was gonna run like it looked like it was gonna run on the Switch 1 presentations, which thank goodness, because I can't lie, Pokemon could still definitely use some work in a couple of departments, but hey, we're learning a little bit, and that's all I can ask for. And thanks to this decision, we could finally have one of the smoothest running Pokemon games in a very long time, especially on a home console. I don't even think Pokemon Let's Go was running that smooth. It's been a long time since I played that game, but it was not touching this by any means. A lot of people are definitely going to argue and still say that Pokemon Legends ZA looks completely trashy and bummy and uninspired and things like that, and everybody's completely entitled to their opinion. But if you were to put Legends ZA gameplay side to side next to pretty much almost any other Pokemon game on the Switch 1, it would probably get a little giggle out of you, because then you'd realize how much farther along this game looks than anything prior. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but you know what? Some progress is better than no progress. Especially when we realize that this is apparently the first game to run in over 60 frames since Pokemon Emerald. Like, are we kidding? I didn't really notice that, of course. As a kid, the last thing I was thinking about was frame rates on a Game Boy. I didn't care about that. Pokemon was giving me what I needed. And it's just insane to me because why? Why was a Game Boy game able to put out that kind of an output that home console games in 2020 plus couldn't handle? It's just strange to me. And it's kind of funny when you think about it that I bring up the Wii U era, because that's the one era that Pokemon simply did not decide to participate in whatsoever. Very strange that the strongest console before the Switch 2 did not have any Pokemon on it. But you know what? Again, better late than never. We now have a Switch 2, and we are now getting Pokemon Legends ZA at some point in the year, and that's super exciting and all. However, with all of this being said, there is one major upside and one potentially extremely major downside to all of this. As per usual, we always start with the positive, and the positive is simply the fact that we could possibly expect higher quality Pokemon games of this caliber from now on. They have been working on 2 versions of this game within the last year, which kind of very much explains why we didn't hear anything for the entirety of 2024. They actually did have to, this time around, build the game and then take as much time as needed, probably that extra year, to polish it up and make sure that it looks and runs pretty for the Switch 2. And that extra year off could definitely mean a lot of things outside of the fact that we're getting our most polished Pokemon game in ages. We already know good and well that Pokemon Company has Game Freak working around the clock, and because of that, they have to separate their teams. They always have multiple minds working on different projects at any given time. So, with that extra year that they were forced to work a little bit more on Pokemon Legends ZA, which for the most part looks damn near finished, it's very likely that they gave even more extra time to their other developers to work even more on other Pokemon games that we have no idea about in the background. Most likely Generation 10, very possibly Generation 5 remakes or whatever else is going to be in between, but the general gist is those projects are getting a little bit more time to be worked on. And now, with the power output that we have with the Switch 2, we can at the bare minimum expect them to look and run as smoothly as Legends ZA might going forward. Of course, this comes mostly down to the developers, not the console. They actually have to put in time, effort, and care into their products, so let's hope that they're doing that. But I feel like Pokemon Legends ZA could be the bare minimum of what to expect going forward with mainline Pokemon games. Now, unfortunately, there is one potentially extremely massive negative that could impact all of this. Now, this next concern of mine actually stems from Nintendo, even though they're probably not the ones that make the decision on this, but it's their fault that I'm thinking this way now. Everybody thought that it was extremely strange that during the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation, they didn't show off any prices for anything that they were talking about. It wasn't until after the presentation had concluded that our worries were completely valid. Now, me personally, I think that the price for the Nintendo Switch 2 in of itself is completely fine. We are playing a handheld version of an actual modern console from Nintendo. So for $450, pray to Shinx that it stays that way, I can live with that. That's totally fine. Is when you look at the prices for these games, everybody lost their minds, and rightfully so, when they heard that Mario Kart Worlds was going to cost $80 for a digital copy. Damn near 20% of buying the console itself. That is bonanza. No Donkey Kong type beat. That is crazy. And it's kind of a similar problem with a lot of the other games that are coming out on this console, because as much as I'm excited for that Donkey Kong game that I just mentioned, it's $70. But like, how much am I possibly gonna get out of that that's gonna make it worth $70? I want these games and I want this damn console, but we're in tough economic times, man. We can't just be buying $80 games every single time you drop one, bro. That's not okay. Now, with all that explained, I'm sure a couple of light bulbs went off in your heads as soon as I mentioned prices. Now, we don't even know when Pokémon Legends ZA is going to come out. However, one thing we don't know for certain is the price of this game. This concerns me to a great deal because Pokémon Company has always been and will always be way greedier than Nintendo has ever been. With most of the home console Pokemon games as living, breathing proof, this is kind of a scary problem. Of course, the problem of their greed doesn't simply start from the Switch era. It goes back quite a ways. For quite some time now, they've been kind of expecting us to get both versions of every mainline game that's been coming out. One of the many reasons for the existence of something like Pokemon Bank or Pokemon Home is so that if you don't have any friends that play Pokemon and want to trade with you, then hey, you can just go ahead, load up Pokemon Bank or Pokemon Home, put all of your Pokemon in there from the other copy of the game, and put them in your other copy so that you could complete the Pokédex. Of course, that's not like probably the intended purpose, but I feel like that's one of them. That's probably something that ran through their minds as a possibility, right? Obviously, they profited from this because they were selling the exact same game with very minor changes twice over to millions of people for years on end without anybody thinking a little too hard about it. So, come November of 2022, no wonder Pokemon Scarlet and Violet released in the states that they were, because if they were able to get away with something like that for years on end, why wouldn't they be able to get away with putting out an unfinished product? That just makes plenty of sense, doesn't it? And so, here's where my concern lies. If they had us paying full AAA title price for unfinished games with DLC that was a majority of the price of the baseline game in of itself, what do you think is gonna happen when they put out an actual polished product? I have no doubt in my mind that they're gonna feel so entitled to actually putting out a regular finished product of a game that it is probably gonna cost minimum $70, possibly $80. Because if they manage to set that standard, we are very much cooked. Very much cooked. So to say that I'm a tad nervous about that possibility would be a grave understatement. They now have a console on their hands that is capable of industry standard level games, and you're telling me that because of that, they feel entitled enough to slap $80 price tags on these games solely because they're stronger? I don't know how to tell you this, Chief, but games like Infamous Second Son were running this back in 2014. $80 should not be the standard. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. He yells into the abyss as he reluctantly pulls out his wallet to buy the entirety of the Switch bundle, including Mario Kart World, and prepping up so that he can live stream Pokémon Legends ZA on day one. I'm sick, gang. I'm so sick and tired. I mean, we'll have to see, because I actually don't really know what this future is going to look like, especially because people have been very angry. During the Nintendo Treehouse Showcase today, where they were showing off all of these games, the entirety of the chat did not care about any of these games. They said, drop the prices. For 3 hours straight, it was just drop the price of the games. That was it. Nintendo can't be ignoring that. This is all especially because we in the US are about to suffer from a very horrific tariff situation. And if that goes through, the Switch is not gonna be $450. It's gonna be around the $600 range. And I can't really imagine a situation where anybody's gonna be happy paying $600 plus for the console in of itself, and then $80 for the game. That's too much. That's asking way too much. So of course, this all ties back to Pokemon, because the idea of paying anything above $60 because the game is polished would be absolutely infuriating, because we got to be real here. They have not earned that right. They have not earned the right to force us to pay more just because the game is actually polished this time. That's not really fair. Not when they haven't put out a polished product that won't turn in on itself every single time we boot the game up in years. So yeah, I'm a little nervous to see what that actual price is going to be. I hope Nintendo is listening, because at the very least, I can deal with the Switch 2 price as it is. It's going to definitely be a problem if it shoots up another $200 because of the situation that we're dealing with now. But if that's the case, there's just no way we can get that and the games comfortably. It's too tough out here. It's really, really tough. And that's not a fair request at all. Especially if we're inevitably going to get like DLC and stuff like that in the future. And I know for a fact that price is going to be same as ever, 40 extra, 50 extra dollars. That's going to piss me off. But I guess we will have to see what the future brings. I really do hope that Pokemon and Nintendo are paying attention, because it's getting bad out here, man. So we'll have to play things by ear. But for now, I'm passing the mic over to you guys, and I want you guys to tell me everything you're thinking in the comment section below. Are you excited for ZA Switch 2 Edition? Do you think that it looks okay? Do you think it looks a little bit better than before? Are your thoughts on it improved in any way, shape, or form? Or are you on the opposing end? This game still looks like dog water. You want nothing to do with it, and you're gonna pass this one up. Tell me everything you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I am always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be Skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Doing the greatest favor, taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
I stay funky, doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky, battle goes wherever I am. I stay funky, I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky, honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky, get the club popped off like pins.